A note on my background before I begin, I have converted my recording space into a hangout room for my 12-year-old son, and so now I'm redoing my recording studio elsewhere in the house. It won't stay like this, I think. In 2019, I interviewed designer Claude Leroy at the Game Fair in Cannes about the founding of a new publisher, Cosmo Ludo, that would reissue some of his older abstract strategy designs in addition to releasing new titles from him. We got to check out a few mock-up copies of titles that will be coming from Cosmo Ludo, including Pantareï, which is ancient Greek for everything flows, this being an aspect of the philosophy of Heraclitus, best known for the saying, no man steps in the same river twice, namely because the river changes over time, and so you can never step into exactly the same river again. This name is appropriate for the title because you are effectively making a river of tiles, and that river is never going to be the same from one game to the next. This game is now released, so we can replace this mock-up copy with the actual published design. The graphic design comes from Tom Delahaye, who is also the editor of the Cosmo Ludo line. He's put a lot of thought into the look of the design. One little fancy bit that I thought I'd mention is that the game comes shrink-wrapped with the description in the back in 5 languages on this sheet of paper, giving an example of gameplay and the components. And then when you remove the shrink wrap, this just comes off. And so instead you have this clean-looking box, not marred by any advertising. It's just iconographic all the way around. Let's look at the gameplay. Pantareï consists of 19 tiles, 9 black, 9 white, and 1 neutral. Players are not a color at the start of the game. Instead, you designate a starting player. And both players turn the tiles face down, shuffle them, and then arrange them into a line, a river, if you will, of tiles. Although you can also think of it as a snake, because the rules talk about the tiles being scales. After you have done this, you turn everything face up, and each player has 3 1s, 3 2s, and 3 3s that are in some arrangement here. No river the same as previous river. And the starting player chooses a color that they are going to control. So let's say I look at this and decide I want to have the white tiles. The other player will control the black tiles, and they will take the first turn. On a turn, you are going to choose a stack that is topped by one of your tiles. In this case, all the stacks are only 1 tile high. And you are going to move that tile as many spaces as the number showing on it. So I can move this 3 this way and cover my opponent's piece. I can move it this way and cover my own. That is up to you how you want to do it. You can land on the neutral piece if you wish. If you're at the end of the line, well, clearly you can only go in one direction. So let's say they go here, 3, and now the river is shorter. The snake shrinks because now we have a stack. So now I take my turn. Now you've got choices. Once you have a stack of 2 or more tiles, you can move either the top tile or the top 2. You cannot move 3 or more, so if you have a stack that is 3 tiles high, you're going to leave something behind. But you're going to do something. And so I can take this again. I can eat and make taller stacks. And what you are trying to do, the goal of the game, is to create a stack that is 7 high. So looking at this, white player just took this turn. The black player could jump here to control this, but knows that then the white player will take it right back. So maybe don't do that. Maybe instead go 3 this way, and so you've got a 3 stack that can attack this one. And now you can plan, maybe in the future you're going to have 2, and then they go here, and then they go here, and you'd win. But they're probably not going to do that. Additionally, they have this piece. They can jump on top to neutralize your attack. And again, everything shrinks over time. So now the black player goes. What do they want to do? Of course, the more pieces you control of your opponent, the fewer options they have available to move. Possibly that's helpful. Again, this one can go here, but then it can be covered again by this piece. Let's say we do this. And now the player with the black tiles has only 4 stacks from which to choose. They can move the top one or the top 2, although then they would expose the tile underneath. So perhaps they do this, and so now they can move away in the future and have only that one. Although that's probably a horrible move. No, it's not a horrible move. This player can move here to make 6, but then the player with the black tiles could win. So don't do that. All sorts of possibilities as you're looking. The one aspect the rules don't cover is whether you have to remember what tiles are in which stack or whether you can look. They do not address whether I have to recall exactly what's underneath. What am I going to expose if I move these pieces here? Am I going to expose something that then allows me to counterattack in a certain direction, or will it be useless? You can decide as you play. Instead of moving on a turn, you can choose to swap 2 of your stacks. So if I feel this one is at risk based on what's here, perhaps I want to swap, although I'm controlling the white tiles. I cannot do that one. Let's say, there we go. I'm going to do that instead. I got other plans. I'm not sure what. But if you swap on a turn, the opponent cannot swap on their own turn. They must then move, so you're forcing them to do something. In this case, maybe they're going to go here, but now it's making a stack of 5. They have fewer choices, well, maybe, than they might think. And so now again, you're going to continue to here, and so on, continuing until someone gets a stack that is 7 high and wins. If you ask someone to describe an abstract strategy game, their description would probably fit Pantareï to a T. It's like an archetype of this particular type of game, in that it has extremely simple rules, it has no randomness beyond the setup, it has wooden components, although those are not essential, and it has clarity of available moves, in that you can look at the board and you can see everything that you can do. You can imagine you're going to make particular moves, and then you can imagine what's available to your opponent and what they can possibly do on their turn and what that will leave you with, and so on and so on. You can imagine how things will play out over time. There's enough pieces to provide variety to the setup and the possibilities and the layout of everything when you're starting the game, but there's not so much that it is overwhelming. And then as things get absorbed over time, some pieces just go out of play because they're going to get buried in a stack and probably not return. Over the 4 games that I played, we have not used the swap move once, and I think that's possibly just because at this point of our exploratory phase of learning the game, adding the swaps are just a few too many moves. You take the number of moves that's available to you initially, you've got 9 pieces, they've got 2 moves each, assuming they're not at the ends, and if you add the swaps, that's a lot more possible moves, considering that you have so many different swaps available to you. Possibly we just haven't seen the advantage of it, or at least at the beginning of the game, it's much more about you trying to restrict the choices available to your opponent rather than do anything tricky. Because if you cover an opponent's piece, well, great, they have fewer choices available to them. And if you can keep restricting their choices, then in theory, they're only going to have a limited number of choices, and you can see very clearly what they are and respond to them more easily. And again, maybe it's just because I played only 4 times and I'm not looking far enough ahead and seeing what's available to me. You build that up over time. So like many abstract strategy games, Pantareï is relatively quick, plays in 10 minutes, because everything that you're doing is generally shrinking the board, which again restricts the number of choices available and starts squeezing the opponent and what is available to them. You are that snake in the game, ideally wringing your opponent's neck and leaving them no outs. Metaphorically, of course, not in real life. So Pantareï has aspects of other abstract strategy games that I greatly enjoy, such as Sid Sackson's Focus and Chris Berm's Dwan. Both of them have this stacking element as well, where a stack is going to move as many spaces as the number of pieces in that stack. What's a little different though, Focus is very much about building up stacks where if the stack goes over 5, then pieces on the bottom come off. You capture the opponent's pieces and you can return your pieces to play and sort of cycle through them. Dwan has a 2D board, has a game board that's like 5 rows wide and I forget how many long, and it's got 3 neutral pieces on there, and you have to stay connected to a neutral piece as the board shrinks. But nothing gets unstacked. A stack permanently moves as many spaces as it is high. If it goes over 5 spaces, 5 pieces high, well, then it can't jump across the board because it would be off the board completely and out of play. And if you can make moves to strand stacks that are no longer connected to neutral pieces, they're just removed from the game. So someone can build up an awesome stack and then you can just boom, bump it all out of play. Pantareï works differently. It's got a different focus with that 7-tile victory condition. That needs to be your focus for everything, because as soon as something gets 4 high, then you're looking at, okay, well, that could end in 2 moves. Even 3 high could end in 2 moves depending on how everything else is set up. But what's interesting is you can take stacks apart again and dissolve the possible winning condition. That was an interesting discovery because I didn't think of it initially, being familiar only with Focus and Von. No, you can build stacks and then you can take them apart again. And of course, if you have a lot of your opponents underneath you, you could expose them again and then they can respond. They can bring that piece back to life, essentially. But I don't know, maybe that's the right thing to do. I don't know. Again, I've only played 4 times so far, and it's really intriguing what I've seen so far. And so we got more exploration in the future. I should mention that this copy of Pantareï comes from the BGG store because Cosmo Ludo does not yet have distribution in the United States, so Board Game Geek reached out to them to see whether we could carry the game for sale, and now we have it, along with Mana and Hokkito, both 2-player abstract strategy games from Claude Leroy. Not yet played Hokkito. I played Mana twice and need to play more before I can really talk about it. Your move is going to determine which pieces your opponent can move, so you got this back and forth with you forcing moves upon the other player, which has some similar aspects to Pantareï in that the opponent has to respond very directly to the threats that you make. It's not quite the same, but it's got a similar feel to it. But Pantareï was my clear choice for first play because of its similarities to Focus and Von, 2 titles that I already knew that I enjoyed. And this has lived up to it so far, but 4 games is a drop in the bucket for something like this. You really need a lot more to become familiar with it and be able to read the board better and understand how to swap and understand what to choose to begin with. I don't even know what color to choose at the start of play unless there's like 5 tiles of one color. Don't be that color. Okay, be something else. But there's a lot more to explore from this point on.